Before we get to the episode, exciting news. I have a new podcast, a second podcast. I am the host and producer of the Strandcast, the official podcast for Strand Bookstore in New York City at 12th and Broadway, the coolest independent bookstore. And now there's a podcast every other week featuring long-form conversations with authors from different genres. The Strandcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher. Just search for The Strandcast. Links will be in the show notes, of course, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And now for the show. Hello there, and welcome to a new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boyce. I am Boyce. I am your podcasting host. Thank you so much for listening. For the first-time listener, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, both established and emerging from all different genres. And on this short episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Chris Schwartz. Chris is a part of musical history, a part of hip-hop history. In 1989, he founded the hip-hop label Ruffhouse along with Joe Nicolo. In the 90s, Ruffhouse was one of the most successful labels in the industry. The roster included Kriss Kross, Cypress Hill, and the Fugees, and of course, Ms. Lauryn Hill. Chris has a new book out. It is a memoir, and it's called Ruffhouse: From the Streets of Philly to the Top of the 90s Hip-Hop Charts, with a foreword by Ms. Lauryn Hill and an introduction by Questlove. It is an excellent read that mixes both the personal and the business of the music business. In the book, Chris talks about his time at Ruffhouse, how he founded it, and he talks about his horrific childhood, substance abuse, his initial dream to be a musician. He also talks about a stint in the Navy and also managing School ED. It was a pleasure to meet and talk to Chris. We had minimal time, so this interview just hits the highlights, which means you absolutely must read the book so you can find out everything in detail. I think the book is an excellent example of someone taking a chance on their dreams and seeing what happens, which is always good advice. We recorded this conversation with an audience of one. Chris's guest was in the room, and you can hear her enthusiastically in the background at times. I know you will enjoy this interview as much as she did. So here it is, without further ado, my conversation with Chris Schwartz. Enjoy. I love the book.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoyed it. And reading it, one of the many things I wanted to know is, how does a Frank Zappa fan end up running one of the biggest hip-hop labels? I'm a Zappa fan myself.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You're the first person to ask. I cannot believe nobody's asked me that question.
Really?
It boggles my mind. Boggles my mind how nobody could. Yeah, I know, because it's just like, it doesn't seem like one of these things doesn't go with the other, right? Yeah. Well, it's, let's face it. If you're a Zappa fan, right, you're a music person.
Yeah.
You're a music person. And I see, a lot of people don't know this about Frank. You may know. Frank started out in an R&B group.
Yeah.
Playing guitar. What were they called? It's like the Black something or whatever. But that's what he did.
Yeah. He loved doo-wop.
Yeah, he was a doo-wop guy and all that. And, it's just music. It's music.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, it was because of Zappa, I got into all this other stuff, and a lot of it had to do with one of my best friends, Jeff Coulter, and he was a drummer, and we were really, really into, especially in like junior high and everything, stuff that had like musicianship where people were playing odd time signatures and, like, right? So all, that's what all Frank's stuff is like, right? Yeah. And then, I became a vibraphonist. Because
really? Okay.
Yeah. When I was in the Navy, I bought a set of Deegan Electrovibes because, I wanted, because of Ruth Underwood and, and I remember I got a Gary Burton, Gary Burton, he put out an instructional book for vibraphones. And I, the first page of the book, because he's really serious in this book. And he's like, well, I'm assuming that as a student that you know how to read music and you're achieved and all this blah, 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 blah. You know, I just said, screw that. And I just went and I started learning the scales, you know.
So speaking of the Navy, it's like, okay, in the book you talk about how, you know, I guess we can get into your background, but how you were actually kind of looking forward to boot camp because how could it have been any worse?
Yeah.
Was it? How was boot camp?
Boot camp was... Oh my God! It was like a joke. I mean, I shouldn't say that. You know, I don't want to disrespect anything hanging with the armed services. Compared, all right. So you got these guys who are, you know, in their 60s or whatever, they're walking around with a clipboard and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And they walk up to you, okay, son, you're in the Navy, 4 years, may as well get used to it. Drop down, give me 20, and you do the push-ups. You start doing it, and they walk away from you.
Okay. And
it's
that's
like, they walk away. It's like, you don't know what you're like, it should stop for you. Yeah, because it's not combat, you know. It's about teaching you how to live on a ship. So I didn't think there was anything, you know, strenuous about it. You know what I mean? And like, you know, they come in, they throw a garbage can down the middle of the barracks in the morning, you know, at 5 a.m, you know. And that was like... I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just happy to be away from my house.
Yeah. So were you like plotting anything? Like, what am I going to do when I get out of the Navy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, see, I started that plan the day I got in.
Okay.
I was actually...
And what was that?
No, I was actually planning on the plane to boot camp. I was planning that.
Okay.
My plan was that my first order of business was I wanted to go out and get a real electric guitar. Because I'd never owned one. I mean, a name brand, nice electric guitar. And my plan was to practice, you know, in the Navy.
Okay.
And then get out and become a musician.
Okay.
That was my plan.
Okay. So you're just going to learn I'm going to be the best guitar player I can in the Navy.
The Navy was just like, it was means to an end for me. I could get away from my family. I figured at some point, because, you know, you got to see and everything, you had hours of time yourself. You know what I mean? I had a whole thing. Yeah.
And from there, like, so you get out there. How long were you in the Navy?
3 years.
Okay. And how was the whole experience for you overall?
It was, you know, I'll tell you this. I think it part of it made me the man I am today. Here's why. Because I was, as a child and like in a teenager and everything, I was very awkward. I had no self-esteem. And I was, you know, I was a basket case, you know, and I was like, just like this lump of like, you know, and when I got into the Navy, you know, you're living in a room with 87 other guys, right? Well, it's sink or swim. You're forced to learn how to socialize. You're forced to learn how to talk to people because you don't have a choice in the matter, you know? So I learned how to talk to people and, you know, and I found out that after a couple practice runs and, you know, the telling jokes and everything that I was pretty good at it. So
was it kind of shocking to you that there was a side of you that comes out like that you didn't know was there?
It was. As a matter of fact, it made me even more resentful. You know, that I wasn't this like, you know, whatever I thought I was at the time. That I did actually have, you know, a certain degree of intellect and, you know what I mean. When I started to realize I was everything that they told me I wasn't, you know, and so it was.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So, like, talk about so you get out the Navy. Like, what happens next? Like, what leading to Ruffhouse?
So I got out, and my big thing was besides like Zappa, and so you're a Zappa fan, right? So are you familiar with like Gong?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the whole Gong thing, right? You know all that stuff. Okay, so David Allen, Pierre Morlaine, Steve Hillage, right, and then King Crimson, Robert Fripp. You know, the different, you know, Lark's Tongue and Aspic, Court of the Crimson King, and then there was the whole Discipline era with Adrian Bellou, who was that. So I was in that whole thing. League of Crafty Guitarists, League of Gentlemen, you know, so I was like really into this gig, and But part of that, if you're into that, you're also going to be into Eno, right? Obviously. Yeah. But you're also going to be into some level of like the electronic music. Yeah. How can you not, right? Like it was like Oxygen. Jean-Michel Jarre. Yeah. His father is
Michael.
Michael
or Michelle? Is it Michael or Michelle?
Michel Jarre. Yeah, the father did those big movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
And the son did Oxygen. That was a big record, right? So, but so those were seminal records. You know that Vangelis.
Yeah,
from the movie and everything.
Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire, right? Chariots of Fire, right? So, so those were the seminal records of a huge genre of music that a lot of people weren't aware of over here, but over in Europe, it's like, all over the place. So I was into that, right? And so we, like, as musicians, my friend Jeff and I, we were into playing it and, creating it, recording it and performing it and everything. So part of that is that you're going to have that type of equipment, the keyboards, I think one time we had like 14 keyboards and, we still own a lot of stuff. 2 Mellotrons, right? The Mellotron, man, it's like...
Those are arm and a leg, right?
Yeah. I talk about Richard Barrett in the book.
Yeah.
Richard Barrett lived around the corner from me.
Okay.
I drove over to his house one day, and he is having work being done, and there was like these dumpsters and everything. And there was this big road case.
Yeah.
I said, Richard, what's this? And he's like, some keyboard. I'm just taking up space, throwing it out, right? And I'm like, so I go over, and I'm like looking, and it says Mellotron. And I'm looking, there's a bill of lading on it.
Yeah.
In the early 80s, he was touring with the 3 Degrees over in Europe.
Yeah.
CBS Europe bought them a Mellotron, right? To do these shows because they figured they wouldn't have to hire a string section.
Okay. Because that was the intention.
So check this out. So they used it on like a bunch of shows in the UK and Scotland, England, and if Europe. They went to Japan, and CBS Japan bought them a string synthesizer. Okay. So the Mellotron got shipped home and stayed in the road case.
Okay.
He was throwing it out.
Yeah. It just meant nothing to him.
Yeah, because because the thing is, why would it? When you think about it, why would it? He's not thinking of, something that the Beatles and David Bowie is something that, to him, it's a really crappy sounding thing that makes string sounds. You know what I mean? But he's not, because he has no cultural affiliation with the whole concept of a Mellotron and why it's important to, you know what I mean? So, he was throwing it out, man.
Okay. And that's how you got it.
And here's the thing, man, we bought it over to I had a studio in Bryn Mawr. We got it out. We're looking at it, and Jeff is like the back of it and everything. That the tape, he said it's like it just came from the factory. Yeah. It still had the bill of lading on the thing. It showed where it had been. So we figured it had been used like 6 or 7 times, and that was it. Yeah. So we have 2 of them now.
Okay.
Yeah. The gong, they call him the Mellodrome. David Allen, Mellodrome. Okay. Right. Yeah.
So how come you didn't? It didn't go in the direction of a music career and went more into business.
I was in a couple groups, and the one group where it should have happened, it did not happen. And the thing is, everybody around us was getting signed. Yeah. And the reason we didn't get signed, we had a group. It was kind of like the closest thing I could pay. It was like New Order, right?
Was that Tangent?
What? Well, no, it was Tangent. Jeff and I joined another group called Rhythm Lines, and like the big record at the time was like Power, Corruption, and Lies, right?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
That was exactly what I wanted to do because if you listen to that record, it's like Kraftwerk, right? It's Kraftwerk, and and the guys that were in this band, they wanted to be successful too, but how they wanted to do it, I don't know. I always thought it was about songs. That's what I was taught. Yeah. I was taught in songs. It's about songs. Yeah. A song is you can get very far on a good song. Yeah. I didn't want to do that, So So then what happened was that Jeff and I left that band and we started doing like commercial dance music, you know, kind of like Emergency Records, Xena, and Shannon, you know, and you know, the 808 and Clint, yeah. So so while doing that, I started working with a very, very young hip hop group, and this was I think 1980, late 82, early 83, I think, yeah. And that's when hip hop was in its very embryonic stages, you know, and all the groups, you know, had the rapper, the turntable, and the dancers, and you know, and stuff. And
did you connect with hip hop from the beginning?
Yeah, because all the beats, I'd already been using those beats. That's the thing. If you listen to a lot of electronic music, right? I could pull records out from 1978, 77, 76. If you take away the music and you just have the beat, it's as hip hop as it can be, you know? So that's the thing. There was nothing alien about it. You know what I mean?
Like a good transition.
There was nothing alien about it, you know? It was, to me, it was like, okay, so it's really like a very kind of specialized spoken word over the beats, you know? So,
yeah. So to explain, like, let's get into like Ruffhouse, like some of the highlights. Ms. Lauryn Hill, Fugees, Cypress Hill,
highlights. Yes, the highlights. Yeah. Well, you know, we had before that stuff happened, we had like our very first year, we did Tim Dog, right?
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's funny. You listen to that Tim Dog record now, it's oh God, but. It was we sold 100,000 copies of the single of the song "Fuck Compton" on a VHS for $9.99. $9.99, right? Now the album, you know, did like 30,000 copies or whatever, but $9.99. It was the number one song too. So that was like, you know, that was a big deal for us at the time. You know, it's like, wow, we just clocked $1 million. You know, Sony and for CBS and everything. I think our first our thing was you know, the Cypress Hill. That was the, you know, the one of the defining moments because it was we just jumped over Schoolie, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Let's go back.
Okay.
Because before, between doing the drum beat for the kids, right, and Ruffhouse, there was that, right? So by the time I had hooked up with him, I had already worked with a bunch of groups, okay? And it was all pretty much the same. That was, to me, and I said this on another podcast a couple weeks back, it's the Schoolie D PSK singles, right, were as important to me as the Miseducation. Because it was a record that basically totally turned hip hop on its head. You know, I mean, everything was all happy rap, and you know, and everything was this whole, you know, everybody. I mean, it was all self proclamation and everything like that. But there was nobody doing beats like that, and then using that like lazy gangster voice, and you know.
Well, you talking in the book how you was booking him in like rock clubs. Like, how did you get the idea to do that?
Because white kids liked rap, you know, and you know, I'll tell you, there was a lot of reverse racism. There were situations where, you know, I think there was a lot of resentment because, like, let's face it, in the 60s and the 70s, right? Any record company had a black music department. They got stiffed on budgets and everything all the time. So now there were a lot of older African-American executives that did not like the idea of that this is ours and we're not going to market it to, you know, but they didn't want to hear about a white rapper, but it was just a thing that Schoolie stuff just, you know, it clicked. It clicked with the white audience. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that was made in his career was that when we did end up with Jive Records, that, his first album on Jive was called Am I Black Enough For You?
Yeah.
That was his response to, like, they said, well, we need you to establish a following at Black Radio. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think messed him up.
Okay.
I think it messed him up. Because if you listen to those records, Smoke Some Kill is okay, but it was just discombobulated,
Yeah.
And I think they just should let him do what he does,
Yeah.
and because that's what made us so successful. Mm-hmm. I think if they'd have just let him just continue on,
he would have found his audience.
But there was a big thing was that they tried to push him to Black Radio.
Okay, and that did not work.
Yeah.
Okay, so him.
Okay, so
Cypress Hill, was that next?
Cypress Hill.
Okay.
We had put out the first single, second single, third single was "Hand on the Pump," and the B-side was used in the movie Juice.
Yes.
The movie Juice,
yes.
Right? The scene where Omar Epps is being chased by Tupac Shakur through the party. And when you sat in the movie theater, when they started playing Killer Man, it was like, you see everybody like in their seats. They couldn't sit still. Yeah. I was on Questlove, right? Mm-hmm. And they all talked about the first time they heard Cypress.
Oh, really?
Everybody,
okay.
That's the thing I'm getting now. I remember the first time I heard Cypress. Uh-huh. I'm hearing it now. The first time I heard Cypress. Because it's so, there's nothing like it.
Yeah,
there's nothing like it. And for me, in terms of pedigree, right? It was to go from Schoolie to Cypress. There wasn't the beats and everything. It was like they sat nicely together on the shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They sat nicely together, And so that was always my barometer, and that's why it was very hard for me to get into a lot of hip-hop that people wanted. Yeah, I'll tell you what, after Schoolie D, I hated everything.
Oh, really? Okay.
I hated a lot of stuff that people bought in. I was like, I just,
If you had your druthers, how would it evolved?
You mean in terms of A&R?
Yeah.
Well, I know. I mean, it's just kind of hard because to me, hip hop, especially like the Schoolie D, it's all about credibility and where it's coming from and what it is, and it's like an artist who has their own ideas, and it's artistry. Because let's say it, as record labels, what are we other than we are curators, right?
Yeah.
We curate. We're people who find great artists. And we curate, we give them a place, a platform to put out records and to do this and everything. So what I think when you look at the label's roster, especially when I'm talking about like an independent or a label like ours or labels, it says a lot about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's why I always felt that. And I used to tell my partner, this Joe Nicolo, all the time. Joe sometimes had like a little bit of a cavalier attitude about stuff. It's something, somebody would bring him something, and he wasn't sure about it.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, "Well, we'll just drop a 12-inch, right?" And it's like, drop a 12-inch. I said, Joey, and this is like later on.
Yeah.
I said, do you know that when we put out a record and it's got our logo on it, we're telling the world we think this shit is incredible?
Yeah.
I said, why would you experiment like that?
Yeah.
But see, the other part of it too, and I don't blame it, I never blame this, because I don't think he never really understood what went into dropping a 12-inch. It's a record, so we got to do a contract.
Okay,
right,
yeah.
You got to set up marketing, and then there's A&R administration. Like there's all this work involved in it. It's not just. It's not like you're going to master a tape and go to send it to a pressing plant and get like 1,000 records. Press them. That is dropping a 12-inch.
Yeah,
this isn't dropping a 12-inch.
Okay.
No, not involving that machine. Yeah.
So now you got biggest group, or one of the biggest groups, Fugees, Miss Lauryn Hill. What did you hear in the Fugees that wasn't realized until the second album?
Well, what I heard in the Fugees, I heard from day one, right? When we went to the audition, because everybody's favorite question is, so when you saw the audition, could you tell about, Miss Lauryn Hill? Could you tell it? I don't remember her from the audition because there was a bunch of kids there. I just really remember Clef because he was like the de facto leader of the group. And when we went into Sonnenberg's office and we were sitting in these chairs and he had an acoustic guitar and a beatbox, this big boombox, and there was a loop. He was playing a loop on it and playing guitar over it. So you have, and I didn't know they're from Haiti. Yeah, but I knew it was his island. It could have been West Indies. I'm thinking. But anyhow, he's playing guitar. Right, so I figure, all right, so he's from an island community, and acoustic guitars are like they're sacred there. A lot of music is played in the acoustic guitar, so I recognize that attachment. Okay, but this is New York City in 1992, 93, right? And so there's a hip hop thing here, right? So the two things are combined, and I'll never forget the other day I was talking about this. It was a cultural imperative. That's why I came up with it. When you have two things, two musical elements, each from a different culture that come together like that, that's a cultural imperative. Okay. That it's just because it has to happen. For him, it has to happen, right? Not like these kids in Philly who are doing hip hop with an orchestra. Yeah, it's so dumb. I just it's so stupid, right? So that I had never heard that. Yeah, I had never heard that. I didn't care about anything else. I thought acoustic guitar, like in what he's doing,
I was and where that could go,
So that's the thing, vocab, right? In those songs. All right, now a lot of people talk about that first Fugees record not being that great till the Nappy Heads remix. Yeah, but you know what? Even as it was still selling 600 to 800 copies a week, 2.5 years after the release of the record.
So there was an audience there, clearly.
Yeah. So somebody was buying those records, and they were touring all the time. Yeah. So I was very happy with the way that went the way a record deal's supposed to go. All right, it wasn't a gold record. But when you're selling 600 to 800 copies a week over the counter, 2.5 years after the record's out, that's what you're supposed to do.
I love that, man.
Yeah, so that was very cool.
Yeah. So let's say, wrapping up, what do you think? What are you most proud of that you've accomplished with Ruffhouse and throughout your career?
Providing a livelihood for a lot of people in a business that's very hard to make your way in. Okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, yeah. I never worked for anybody, but when you're responsible to people, and at one point I had 40 full-time people, and then you have the artists, the managers, your distribution partner. You have a lot of people that depend on your decisions, right? You're working for a lot of people, So but I'm very proud of. I think the School ED records were an important thing, and obviously the other records. They're all Cypress, Miseducation. All these are records that will never go away. Yeah.
So Ruffhouse is back.
Yes, so,
RuffNation.
RuffNation.
So what is RuffNation now?
It is it's a record company. We're doing a lot of different things. We are right now in the process of signing 2 artists. One of them is an artist from South Philly named Flowski, and he's very cool because he talks about things that you hear in other records, but he's putting on an entirely different take on it. You know, like in other words, what is it to be a gangster, right? Because it's funny. Now that's gangster, right? Yeah. See, and he's saying, making sure, being able to stand on the words that come out of your mouth, or teaching your kids, like all that, because that's a word that's so permeated into youth culture now. And he's saying, no, the gangster isn't about that. It's about this. Okay. It's about being responsible to your family and everything. And it's got, the song just exploded like 5 million views and everything. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
This was a pleasure. I wish we had more time.
Thank you very much, man.
I love this.
Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. And the book is amazing. Great job.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chris Schwartz. Make sure you get his book, Ruffhouse, available everywhere. And if you'd like to keep up with Talk Music Talk, you can do so at talkmusictalk.com for more podcast information and to stream every single episode. You can also follow me on Instagram at This Is Boyce. Some call to actions for you. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and much more. Just search for Talk Music Talk. And while you're there, please leave a 5-star rating and or review. You can also download the Talk Music Talk app. It is free wherever you like to get your apps. And again, just search for Talk Music Talk. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.